Hi, it's Maria, and I'm doing another Forgiveness to Love video, but this one is quite special actually, and it's a message that I have been holding on to since 2015 when I awakened in the middle of the night and was kind of told to pull out a notebook and take some notes, which I did. And that incredible night, to my astonishment, I wrote a message titled, My Dear Mr. President. Some of you may have seen it on the internet, but probably not many of you, because I think it was kind of a, what do they call it, shadow banned? Anyway, at some point, I sent it to the Oval Office, and nothing much came of it then. And I shared it with countless others, and again, nothing much came of it. And I put it on social media, and the same thing happened. And so I thought that I needed to just, the timing wasn't right. Right. So, with both gratitude, I was so grateful to get this information, and trepidation because I was a little, I was very ambivalent. I didn't know what I should do with the information. So, I took some baby steps, and I still felt the message was premature. And so, the last thing I wanted actually was for the people that I had included in the message. I didn't want them to take offense because maybe they weren't at a place where they might understand exactly what my point was, and that it was in no way to disparage any particular group. I wasn't looking to create any enemies. I was looking for more of a unity consciousness to prevail. And so, anyway, I thought that in 2015, I thought that the energy was just not right. And it was a rather inhospitable time on the planet. And I also then felt that 2016 wasn't right, and 2017, and 2018, and 2019, and 2020, and 2021. And here we are closing in on 2022. So not only did I send it to President Obama, but I also sent it to President Trump. I sent it even to President Biden. I've sent it to countless people in government. And I also sent my story to countless people in government too. And I heard from no one. And so, other than I did receive a short note from President Obama, in any event, I rewrote the message, and I would put out three different renditions of it. One was very matter of fact, and I think I titled it my 3D, my third dimensional reality. The second one was a little less matter of fact, and it was titled "Let's Join Together." And the third one was very spiritual, and it was titled "Letting Love Lead the Way." And so I wasn't sure, I was deliberating which one I should share with you tonight. And I thought at this point, given the level of consciousness that I see, and everything that's going out into the world, I didn't want to get too out there. I didn't really want to talk about souls and alternate realities and different dimensions. And so I thought, I am going to really just focus on the more of the three-dimensional reality, which is life in the physical on planet Earth, right? They have no concept of the divinity within, and human beings who understand and accept the oneness of all, that see life on our little planet from a higher perspective, and who know that they, like all of us, are here to learn lessons, to raise their consciousness and expand their soul, right? And yet, I'm not sure that we're really there as a collective yet, and especially when I'm targeting the people in government. And so this is really, if you want to know the gamut of what I'm really speaking about, it really is talking about legal reform. Anyway, I'm going to share this message, and I'm going to start with, "It's time, my dear Mr. President. You are the chosen one. You're the leader of the free world. You are the hope of humanity. You have the power. You have the foresight, the courage, and you have the responsibility to change the world as we know it. It's time, my dear Mr. President, for legal reform. It's time to inject some sanity into our judicial system, the judicial system of the greatest superpower this world has ever known, the judicial system of the United States of America. It's time to ease the suffering of men, women, and children, many of whom believe in you, voted for you, cheer you on, honor you, and even revere and venerate you. It's time, my dear Mr. President. It's time for truth, for justice, for equality, for honesty, for integrity and fairness, fair play and square deals. Yes, it's time, my dear Mr. President, for reasonableness, for legitimacy and impartiality and due process, righteousness, ethical behavior, and above all, it's time for peace. And yes, my dear Mr. President, it's time for sanctions, for rectitude, restitution, and reparation. It's time to remove the shackles that imprison our populace the very nanosecond one is served, and thus thrown into a legal den of sacrifice, of character assassination, of scandal and betrayal and financial ruin, bogus custody battles, lawsuits, large and small, punitive, frivolous, or otherwise. It's time for subpoenas and notices for depositions to be issued sparingly. It's time for legal fee control, absolutely. And it's time for negotiation, discussion, diplomacy, compromise, understanding, and compassion. It's time, my dear Mr. President, to delve into the darkness of corruption and ask why. It's time to probe into the bowels of avarice and ask how. How did things spin so ridiculously out of control? It's time to leave no stone unturned and ask when. When will honesty, integrity, and conscience be at the forefront of litigation? When will honesty, integrity, and conscience prevail in the legal process? When, my dear Mr. President, when? As much as I believed it to be so, I experienced a very different reality. When will we see, not through the nebula, the haze, and the fog that have kept men from knowing who they really are and from knowing whom they represent really are in the eyes of God, in the eyes of our Creator, in the eyes of whomever or whatever energy we believe to have given us life force, to awaken each morning, to breathe, to hear my voice, to absorb my message. It's time to see things neither through illusion nor delusion of dulled perception or skewed perspective, but rather through the truth of our very being. Yes, it's time, my dear Mr. President, for us all to remove the masks, to shelf the ego, to get down and dirty with no holds barred, and to help those in positions of power, attorneys, judges, and politicians, to see litigants as their fellow men, not as cash cows or treasure chests, but rather as equals, as brothers and sisters, as members of the one human family. It's time, my dear Mr. President, to question, to inquire, to research, investigate, inspect, and explore better ways, kinder ways, more just ways of doing business. It's time to replace legal battles with win-win mediation and resolution. It's time to replace inhumanity and oppression with equality and civility, sensibility, agreement, and compassion. Yes, it's time to make this world a better world for ourselves, right? For our generation, for our children's generation, for our grandchildren's generation, and for all the generations that are to follow. The legal system of our beloved country needs your help. There are pockets in our beloved country that need not be known for payoffs and payouts and kickbacks and nepotism and cronyism and backslapping and whining and dining and gifting and greasing palms and wheeling and dealing. We've all heard about those. And verdicts to the highest bidder and bought decisions and bribed judges and planted jurors. I mean, it's disgusting, right? Slippery politicians, shady financial experts, treacherous court-appointed custody evaluators, unprincipled psychiatric professionals, tortured litigants, harassed witnesses, threatened children, intimidated court watchers. You see, this is the worst case scenario, but people do actually experience the worst case scenario, and that's why I'm bringing it to your attention. With threatened newspaper reporters, blackmail, extortion, corruption, and collusion, offshore bank accounts, missing persons, unfortunate accidents, undiagnosed cardiac issues, fixers, double dealing, prostituting attorneys sacrificing their own clients to work for the other side, cases lost due to missing documents and late filings by court personnel, appellate court bias, and altered court reporter transcripts, deep pockets, hush money, slush funds, and a dearth of justice in the land of infamy, in the land of green and greed. Why? Why, my dear Mr. President? Why so much suffering? Why so much pain? When is enough enough? Does the bully really win? How can one reconcile destroying families by day and embracing one's own by night? How is one so anesthetized to feel nothing at the ravaging and exploitation of innocent human beings? For how much money is one willing to sell their soul? As for accountability and the review of malpractice complaints, it is the very individuals who commit the most heinous crimes causing insufferable injury that have quite strategically positioned themselves to sit on these regulatory boards. Yes, it's true. And in some cases, to sit on their executive committees, thus sheltering themselves beyond any doubt. With carte blanche, they then are able to continue their moral turpitude. It's time, my dear Mr. President, to shine your light on this cancer, on this malignancy, to shine your light on this horrific situation of illimitable loss that has destroyed countless individuals who have had the courage to speak up about this abysmal and heartbreaking situation, individuals who have been tracked and followed and monitored, intimidated, harassed, individuals who have been set up to lose everything, individuals who have been set up to lose their families, their partners, their lovers, their friends, their homes, their jobs, their businesses, their bank accounts, their resources, their assets, their reputations, and even their lives. It's time, my dear Mr. President, to step up, to put an end to this perverted game, this depraved game of silencing through suffocation, this game of intimidating, squashing, annihilating, and extinguishing. It's time to put an end to this game of murdering the messenger. And my dear Mr. President, you may ask, who are you? Just who do you think you are, Maria Haiti, to cast aspersions anywhere, even if all that you say is common knowledge, even if all that you say is true? How do you know this truth? My dear Mr. President, I have lived this nightmare. I have been pushed to the edge. And although I experienced tremendous spiritual growth, absolutely, for having been immersed in such darkness, I have felt the pain, and I know the despair of so many. I also believe that part of the reason for my very being, part of my soul's purpose, was not only to have seen, heard, felt, experienced, known, forgiven, and been gifted the opportunity to view the above from a higher perspective, a higher vantage point, but also to come to you at this very moment in time, at this very moment in each of our lives, to beseech you, to plead with you, to implore you, to urgently appeal to you, and to pray that you put a stop to this boundless suffering of individuals in this great country of ours who have endured unfathomable loss. Bleeding individuals who have endured excruciating heartbreak and who have been trampled and crushed and tortured and vilified beyond anything they had ever thought possible. Yes, my dear Mr. President, nearly 25 years ago, in 1997, my little girl and my 3 little boys were literally ripped from my arms and illegally seized from me, as were my homes, my possessions. Everything in our life was set ablaze. A raging fire seemed to engulf us, and we became the ashes. 4 years of draining, exhausting, and degrading litigation, totaling several $1,000,000, took its toll on a family ultimately destroyed within the confines of a courtroom. Upon my relocation in 2004, attorneys tentacled their way into the Tampa Bay legal arena, whereby they continued the bogus legal drama, not the least of which included the categorical and undeniable illegal seizure of more assets, including my multi-million-dollar inheritance and my Florida home, furnishings, vehicle, clothing, etc., thus rendering me traumatized, homeless, and at the mercy of sheltered housing and government aid. Shocking? Yeah, undeniably, irrefutably. And yet, most appalling was the malfeasance behind these additional, incontrovertible, sinister acts of malice and conspiracy of epic proportion. My dear Mr. President, my home contained not only the possessions I had amassed during the 14 years subsequent to the rape and pillage of my portion of my marital estate in 2001, but most importantly, thousands of pages of certified court transcripts, motions, orders, exhibits, along with thousands of pages of my own writing, documenting, journaling, cross-referencing, and verifying beyond any reasonable doubt the chilling perjury and the blatant criminality thrust upon me during the 2-decade debacle, where all files had been unlawfully sealed and thus hidden from public view or scrutiny. You see, the goal was now not just to silence and torture me via financial ruin and psychological torture, including a plethora of daily sadistic mind games, but also to destroy all the evidence spotlighting the warranted disbarment of nearly 50 attorneys, as well as the justified defrocking of dozens of judges. My dear Mr. President, one day, locks to my beachfront condo, purchased for me by my parents, were unlawfully changed, and I was never again allowed entry. I had consulted and attempted to hire over a dozen different law firms, yet I was denied legal representation. I was told that not one attorney in the entire state of Florida was allowed to represent me, even though some were to take my case, charge me a huge retainer, withdraw, and then file litigation against me. Yes, The goal was for me to once again lose all resources, such that I was to forever have zero credibility to even whisper the word corruption. I was to be forever gagged. My demise would then be a fait accompli. My dear Mr. President, in 2006, in a fiasco of psychological projection, I was the one found guilty of defamation for a letter I neither wrote nor sent, by a judge who quite candidly claimed to be very close with a relative of the plaintiff, my ex-husband. Evidence of my actual letter was not admissible, and the suit and the verdict were both based on future earnings because his claim was that he became unemployable due to the facts that I included in the letter. My response to that was, if what someone does is so horrible that no employer would hire them, then perhaps they should clean up their act and not choose to engage in such behavior. Well, let me tell you, that didn't go over very well in court. They just kind of ignored me. The kicker was that the day after the verdict, press releases circulated that he had secured a fabulous new position at a boutique investment banking firm, making an annual fortune. His $9.7 million win, I believe to then be the exact amount of one of the accounts in my inheritance. With statutory interest, his win is nearly $50 million. And by the time I reach my 80s, I would owe my ex-husband nearly $500 million. Yes, that's $1/2 of $1 billion to the man I divorced in 2001. After 21 years of an abusive and torturous investment banking marriage for show. The reason I wrote the letter was not even to expose what he had done. The reason I wrote the letter was because I feared for my life, because of his continued threats, personal safety. So the letter wasn't written in order to expose his criminal activities or whatever else was included in there. It was really to say, hey, look, you know what? He's threatened me one too many times, and I truly fear for my life. People were breaking and entering, and he had been poisoning me, and there were all kinds of other issues involved. And so I just want to make that clear in terms of the reason for my having written the letter. And as I have said in previous videos, that in fact, I had visited the FBI and told them of my fears. They actually helped me figure out a way that I would be able to get that information out that would create a safer situation for me. So back to this letter, that was just, I diverted a little diversion there. Additionally, the premier public relations firm was hired to besmirch my reputation, as various journalists, including television and newspaper reporters, were commissioned to broadcast or write horrifically biased and fallacious stories defaming me. Yeah, it's time, my dear Mr. President. This is just, it's just so ridiculous. I don't even know if I want to continue, because it's hard to even believe that this goes on in our country. And you're the only one that can do anything about it. And it's your job, it's your calling, it's your commission, is to protect and to safeguard the citizens of this great country of ours. As such, I beg you to step forth and purge the contagion that has infected our beloved government for decades. And this is not for the faint of heart, no. And this is a Herculean task. Remember Hercules? Yes, you have to be strong. You have to be committed. This is a task to be undertaken by a man of great strength, right? A man of great integrity and a man of great vision. This is a task to be undertaken by you, my dear Mr. President, for only you can mandate that corruption is a plague that will no longer be tolerated. No, a plague that is destroying us from within. And now I ask you, my dear Mr. President, let there be sanity in this madness, light in this darkness, innocence in this criminality, accountability in this tyranny, transparency in this duplicity, decency in this enmity, dignity in this abuse, wholesomeness in this disgrace, morality in this vulgarity, benevolence in this malice, honor in this degradation, compassion in this cruelty, virtue in this evil, justice in this lawlessness. Let this be a time of change. My dear Mr. President, let us shift from a fear-based mentality of vanquishing the enemy to a heart-centered view of our world and those in it, to unstuff the pockets of those in favor and instead fill their hearts with self-respect and self-worth, to seek answers to the problems that face humanity while adhering to extraordinary standards and exceptional solutions for all. And most importantly, to embody the most magnificent version of the highest vision of who we all really are, and to settle for nothing less. My dear Mr. President, it's time for unity consciousness, where we do unto others as we would have them do unto us. It's time to see the oneness of all life. It's time to see you as I see myself. And as I would not choose to disrespect myself, I surely wouldn't choose to disrespect you. For we are really one. We are really the same. It's time, my dear Mr. President, for you have been given the opportunity, the power, the blessing to change the world from the inside out. Yes, you have everything you need to bring about transformation, to create a far better world for your constituents than they ever dreamed possible. My dear Mr. President, you are the ultimate authority. You are the commander-in-chief, the judge, the jury, the magistrate, the marshal, the chancellor, the arbiter, the adjudicator, the appraiser, the evaluator, the critic, the inspector, the warden. Well, you get it. You're just everything, right? I mean, you can make anything happen. The umpire, the referee, the leader, the legal expert, the legal scholar, the cheerleader, and the ultimate peacemaker. It's time, my dear Mr. President, to bring light into the darkest recesses of humanity, to bring light into the courtrooms of America, all the courtrooms, and to bring hope to all the American people. And amazingly, you have at your disposal some of the most enlightened individuals of our time, whose consciousness illuminate our planet, to implement a new way of doing business where integrity, honesty, fairness, and transparency reign supreme. My dear Mr. President, miracles happen, and there are very real solutions at hand for even minor inroads into the potential to increase global consciousness and even transform our country into a country where we may be so proud of the things that we've done to make this world a better place. And now it's time, my dear Mr. President, I ask you to remove the albatross from around my neck and that of others, the ball and chain from our legs, and to open the prison door such that all Americans may finally fly free. I ask that all that was senselessly taken be returned to all the countless people who have lost everything and who are living in homeless shelters, who are living in under bridges, who are suicidal, who have lost everything, including hope. I ask for restitution for their homes, their inheritances, their intellectual property, as well as the fortunes that our parents and grandparents worked their lifetimes to amass for our benefit and the benefit of our heirs. All that has been stripped be returned, such that countless Americans can be made financially whole. I know that no one is able to replace time, not even you. The years of lost moments and lost memories with our children, our family, our friends. As for our reputation, shunning is just part and parcel of corruption, where planted individuals are paid to befriend us, our family, our friends, and then do betray us by spreading rumors, slandering us, libeling us, and portraying us as mentally ill, where we are then left isolated and alone. As for the media, it too creates the person of their choosing. What matters most to us is that our innocence and our efforts to shed light on injustice and our passion for peace and for love in this world are seen through the eyes of God. My dear Mr. President, it's time for you to be the light that transforms the darkness, such that our country is known as the land where justice, truth, healing, freedom, and unity prevail. It's time to raise our consciousness as a people and as a nation. It's time for respect of self and others. It's time for peace, and it's time for love. And may this be your legacy, my dear Mr. President.